get the first two, please. We'll work with you shortly. Okay, I'm going to pass back to yourselves for now. We are going to go to that first ballot. Is there, just before we go to that first ballot, is there any points of clarification? Table 13, please.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Lana.
I just have two questions in relation to this. One question is option B, the limited health diversion. We were told a couple of assemblies ago that that was happening. We were told it was going ahead. So does that make A not an option, really? And the other question is, when voting upon keeping the status quo or not, which is A now, if the room decided to vote in favour of the status quo, is there room for other possible changes, such as health-led approach within the current legal framework, like drugs court, where problematic drug users can then be diverted to health services and recreational users can be fined to fund drug rehabilitation without ever going further?
Thanks, Alana.
Thank you.
Thanks for two very good questions, Alana. The answer is as follows, right? So the reason option A, the status quo, is presented to you is because even though you've heard that the government intends and plans to introduce option B, which is health diversion, as I said, A, that's been in the pipeline for a number of years now and still hasn't happened. But more importantly, B, the members of the room might disagree with health diversion and may feel that actually that's going too far and you might want to retain the status quo. And simply by expressing a majority view that the status quo should be retained, you're expressing a view, consequently, that health diversion shouldn't be introduced. Okay, so that's the first point. And then the second point is, what if option A, the status quo, was voted for? Is there any opportunity within that to introduce change? And the answer is yes. And what you'll see in the other ballot papers that are to come later today and possibly tomorrow is a whole range of different choices that the members can vote on, including some of the, so for example, like there's a stage 4 vote. If option A was the choice of this room, stage 4 includes a couple of options around expanding the use of and the availability of the adult caution scheme, for example, which currently applies just to first-time cannabis users. That could be expanded to include all drugs, and it could be expanded to be available for more than simply first-time users. So those are options within the current legal framework that you can vote on if option A was the preferred outcome of the room. There are other options as well in other ballot papers, such as expanding the drugs treatment court or other models that currently we heard about, like the court's referral programme, to be expanding those type of initiatives on a nationwide basis are options that you can vote for, as well as, of course, you can also vote for increasing the level of services available for people within the prison community that need addiction treatment, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole range of other things that can be voted on, even if option A is the preferred model.
And sorry, Carl, just to add, all of those other options that you'll see, and Alana's second part of our questions, can apply to the other models too.
Yeah.
So they're not much exclusive. So you'll have the option to vote on those other items. The courts, the drugs courts, the criminal prison supports, they still can apply to other models too. So they're not ruled out by a one way or the other.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Ciara, table 1.
Yeah, thanks very much. I suppose we had a question here at our table regarding the status quo also, and I think it chimes in with the second part of that question, and Cathal, what the answer you've given there. And it's related to the last paragraph here of the explanatory note, the fact that the adult caution has scope to be expanded, and the fact that the current legal framework gives judges the basis to allow this, the court's referral programme. So I know, Cathal, you've said that if we voted in favour of option A, that then we would be able to see what choices we have. I would like to see the choices up front. Before I make a decision on what the current legislation is, I'd like to know how can we tweak that? Because there is a view, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there is scope to expand what currently exists, and it hasn't been done because of lack of resources or lack of political will, well then that's going to apply to all the other options as well. So let's see what can be done with this option. And if it's not enough, then we can go on to make other choices. That's just the view here.
Thanks,
Thank
Ciara.
you.
Thanks, Ciara.
Thanks, Ciara. So what I would say is as follows. I can attempt to bring up on screen the two very specific choices that would be available in relation to the adult caution scheme. They would have been circulated previously as draft ballots, and they will appear as stage 4 of ballot paper 2 if the decision is to retain the status quo. So if you can bear with me a moment, Ciara, I'll just bring those up and give you a flavour of what they look like. And this is probably, so. This is just going to take a moment, Ciara, bear with me. This option. So, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind expanding. So you can see that this is one of the, so what we're voting on now is question 2.1, retain the current legislative approach. If there's an overall majority agree to that, these are the follow-on questions that you will have a chance to vote on. Expand the terms of the adult caution scheme to cover all illicit drugs. So currently it applies to cannabis-related offences only, but there is a possibility of making a recommendation that it should be expanded to all drugs. And the second part of that is that it should be expanded to repeat offenders. So currently adult caution is only available for first-time cannabis offences. It could be expanded to include all drugs and repeat offences as well. So that's, if you like, in expanding the terms and conditions of the current adult caution scheme.
And sorry, Carl, just to clarify again, those options, just so we're clear, are available for all models. You'll still have a chance to vote on those. Let's say two scenarios happen. Status quo succeeds or status quo falls, whatever scenario happens. You still have the option on all models to recommend those extra things to happen. So they don't fall, you don't lose them.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the adult caution scheme becomes a bit redundant if, for example, if the decision was to go with Model E and legalise and regulate drugs, then there won't be an adult caution scheme necessary. Or likewise, if there's a version of, let's call it a decriminalisation and health diversion model, the adult caution scheme will become redundant in that scenario. But in the scenario where the status quo is maintained, the adult caution is potentially expandable. And in ballot paper 1, just to jump to it, Ciara, again, to give you a sense of some of the questions, there is options to recommend the state should formalise, adopt and resource alternative health-focused options for people with a drug addiction within the criminal justice system. And so this essentially highlights, if I can do it here, options available like the Cork Courts Referral Programme and the Dublin Drug Treatment Court, and restorative justice options as well. So those are things that currently exist, sometimes on a pilot scale, sometimes in a very limited range of locations around the country, but there's no reason why the Citizens' Assembly couldn't recommend that those be expanded and increased even within the existing legislative framework.
So again, going back to Lana's first question as well, which I think was good, the option that you have there, which is status quo, is without this legislation that's on the shelf because we haven't seen it. So it's exactly as we are today without that. Okay, more questions from table. Zin, please.
Sorry, I just have two questions here that need your clarifications. And one is the likely to be in every options. Should we understand them as a shall be because it sounds a bit uncertain? And the second is the option D as decriminalize personal use of drug possession. And then it says that people found processing of a drug should simply have those drugs confiscated. And how do we determine the quantity and amount of personal drug use?
Sorry, and the second one, we're not right now balloting on option C. It's RD. It's the status quo, exactly as we are today, as we started off in April. The issue of quantity and how much possession would be a detail that would obviously have to be worked out at government level, but we're not at that point just now, Zane, if I can hold you on that one. It's exactly on the status quo is all we're balloting on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Zin. Okay, I'm going to propose now we do move to the ballot, which is 2.1, and it's the status quo. I might just ask Kieran to clarify, and we go to the ballot.
Do you want to clarify that? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, just one point. I had a query from table 11 earlier. and it was a very good question, and I've now reread the proper instructions rather than just the question. The query was what happens if the don't knows are the majority out of the three options you have. And I've just now, which is probably a little on the late side, read the explanatory text just above the question. So this first question you're being asked on to agree with whether we should retain the status quo, agree, disagree, or don't know. What this is if you get a 50% plus one vote, in other words, a clear majority to retain the status quo, then that is the decision of the Assembly, and that is the recommendation we make. If you don't get a clear majority, 50% plus one, on that agree option, so if disagree wins, or if don't know wins, or if between them disagree and don't know combined are more than 50%, you move on to the next question, which is 2.2, which doesn't rule out the status quo. It just means we haven't got a clear overall majority for the status quo. We need to dig a little deeper into it, and the next question and the ones that follow actually still retain the option for you to specify the status quo, and in those cases we'll be using a little more sophisticated methods than just a straight first past the post. Yeah. Does that clarify the question for table 11?
Okay, so I'm going to propose now we will move to your ballot process, which will be a secret ballot process, and Kieran will oversee that as the, so.
Sorry, there's Noel has a question.
Sorry, Noel, I can't see it. Yeah.
Table 11.
Thanks, Kieran, for clarifying that in relation to number 2. But if you think about number 1 and 3 up to 6, what happens when the don't know is in the majority?
Sorry, in terms of which?
So in terms of, not in terms of the second ballot question, because there's a number A down to F.
Oh no, I'm talking about this very first question that you're voting on now.
Yeah, and so my question is, if we're thinking about the other ballots 1 through 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, if the majority is a don't know, does that mean that the recommendation does not go forward at all, or does it mean that we revote, or what does it mean in that case? I understand number 2, we go to the next one, but in the other cases?
Yeah, I'll need to examine in detail the way the wording is on those questions to see if it makes sense. There are circumstances where a don't know is a valid result. It just means we've considered all the evidence and we can't make our minds up, and that may well be a perfectly legitimate result to place. I don't know enough about the details of what you're discussing to know at which questions that's valid, and I'll be relying on your expertise on that one. But in this very first question, it is worded on the paper, and it makes sense to me that you vote to see if there is a clear majority for the status quo, and if not, you go to the next stage. And in fact, the next question is if there's a clear majority for a single approach covering all drugs. Yeah. And again, it'll be if there's an overall majority, we do that, and if not, we go down to the third level, which is again more nuanced, where you could have different approaches for different classes of drugs. Yeah. So, and in terms of this first question, just to be clear, if the yes votes, I think we've 88 people, 89, so 44, 90, 45. If the agrees get a 45 or more, that would make the that would finish the argument on that one, and we say we agree with retaining the status quo, and that's the recommendation of the Assembly. Anything else, we go on to further.
And Noel, could I just suggest that if we have to cross that bridge, we'll cross it when we come to it, and there's ways and means by which we can make a decision. The room can make a decision about the best way forward, but let's wait and see if that materialises.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move to the ballot, which is simple. If you want to stay with the status quo, and the options on your ballot paper there. Kerry,
and sorry, just bear with me because I've missed 2 of the sessions. But again, this process was decided on by the Secretariat. Again, this process wasn't a decision that the Assembly members decided, that we were going to have a sort of knockout round like, if you decide on stage 1, it stays there and then goes to the next stages. This wasn't something that you guys decided how the ballot was going to be structured?
Well,
Okay.
if I could say, Kerry, it's following precedent. This is the way that previous citizens' assemblies have dealt with questions of this nature.
That wasn't actually my question,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to know who made the decision.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Zin, one more time, please.
Sorry, just one quick clarification, please. How much percentages are likely to be like a 90 or 99 or 95? Sorry.
Sorry, Zin, just one more time, please. Sorry.
Sorry, just please clarify how much percentage is term are likely to be in those explanations? Like how much percentage when we say are likely to be?
What's a majority in terms of percentage terms? Is it?
No, sorry, in the explanation like a narrative, right? And we say, for example, the option would C or in option B, specifically, members favor limited health division approach to people found in possession drug for personal use are likely to be of the view of blah, blah, blah. So how much percentage of are likely to be? And is that 80% or 90% or 95% or 100%? Just a quick clarification, please.
I'm not sure. It's an option.
Zin, I think that's probably a question we can come to if we move to stage 2 of the voting.
Okay, so I'm going to move to the vote, please, if we can start this process, and it'll trigger where we go next, please. So we can do it in the next...
Just give us a few minutes to print off the ballot papers.
Okay, we don't have them? Okay, we're just going to print the ballot papers, because in case there was any changes. You'll have them in 2 minutes. There's a smaller queue on the left here as well, if you want to queue up here. You can cast an either box, so if some people want to come over here, this box is valid as well. There's plenty of room over here if you want to. Jesse and Marcus, can I just check if you have had a chance to cast your own ballot? You're okay. Okay, one last call. One last call if anybody else wants to finally cast their ballot. Okay, we'll now close that ballot. I'm going to ask Kieran, Marcus and Jesse to go into the room and complete the count for that, and we will come back and we'll tell you the count. Unfortunately, we can't proceed to the next phase till we know the answer to the first question, so we'll just ask you to bear with us, and it shouldn't take too long. Have the coffee ready, yeah? Okay, maybe, yeah, good idea. Look, do you want to grab a quick cup of coffee? It's ahead of schedule, and then we can keep moving throughout the day. So grab a quick cup on the table there. Thank you.